Gentlemen, welcome back to Mids from the middle of the Midwest. I'm your host, Nixon the Dark, again with the wartime sexual marketplace and analysis. I'm going to begin with a quote from one of my favorite writers of the game era, the peacetime sexual marketplace, Royce. Stuff's hard to find these days, but if you can, I highly recommend reading the first 3 years of Royce, 2007 to 2010. One of his more famous quotes was, I love it, it's so crude, but yet there's like profundity within some of his crude expressions. Gina tingles are born in the defensive crouch. One of the main tenets of game was based on the notion that despite what anybody would say publicly, female sexual arousal was so directly linked to conventional masculinity, which expresses itself most clearly through many forms of aggression. We always talk about sex and violence, sex, feminine, violence, masculine. And when he would use this phrase, it was his way of saying that to be effective as a pickup artist or just a man who's talking to a woman, you kind of have to make her nervous. You're not making her nervous because somehow it like severely impairs her decision making or anything like that. It's more like what you're doing is mimicking the kind of traits that when it comes to sex, women look for and have inherited from the wartime sexual marketplace. Men before, say, the Industrial Revolution didn't need to be reminded of something like that because their mere presence was enough to establish a defensive crouch. Most men would have that level of physicality and aggression, at least compared to what women would expect or understand within their own body and within their own day-to-day behavior. They'd go, yeah, I get it, there's a man here, there may be that man over there who's more impressive, but I see this aggression in this man. I mean, if you watch movies from like the 50s, you will see it pretty normal for men to behave in an aggressive manner that started to go by the wayside after hormonal birth control and many of these other things that have contributed to the peacetime sexual marketplace. I bring this up because I want to convey the concept of an evolutionary mismatch. If you're looking at the sexual marketplace from the perspective of evolution, we are animals, we are evolved to compete for sexual access, reproductive access. Men are evolved to compete with each other for access to women. Women are evolved to filter men and use competition as the measuring stick. When you understand that this is how we were evolved, and if you have a broader understanding, at least of the concept of evolution generally, this notion of mismatch is really illuminating of the wartime versus the peacetime sexual marketplace. Evolutionary mismatch refers to a trait that used to be adaptive and has begun to undermine a species' ability to survive. The most obvious one is our feeding mechanism, for lack of a better word, and it manifests itself in diabetes and other complications of obesity. We're evolved for times of scarcity, in addition to hardship, in addition to all these other things that we talked about in the wartime sexual marketplace. We're evolved for caloric scarcity. And so the way animals eat, and if you follow fitness content, a lot of them will talk about this, which is that when you see food, you shovel it in because you don't know when you're going to get another crack at it. That was an advantage for all of the wartime sexual marketplace. That was an advantage for an agrarian society where almost everybody farmed for a living in some manner. Now it's killing us. By the same token, the wartime sexual marketplace had this expectation that men would behave aggressively and women would reward it through their hypergamous filter, which says this man who's more capable of defeating other men in physical competition, he's the one I'm going to go after. You fast forward to the peacetime sexual marketplace, and you have a society filled with nice guys who can't figure out why women are going after bad boys, at least sexually, why there's this internal struggle that every woman deals with where there's the guy you have a passionate affair with and the guy you marry. It's this notion of the one is the evolved preference. The bad boy is the evolved preference. It's not because of any specific impetus to be bad, so to speak, but his behavior much more reflects how we used to filter for men in antiquity, in the wartime sexual marketplace. So you apply that to modern day and you get Nixon's fifth law of hypergamy. When it comes to sex, women are always preparing for war. I'll repeat that. When it comes to sex, women are always preparing for war. As civilized as we become in every measure you can possibly think of, Gina tingles are born of the defensive crouch. You don't evolve out of hypergamy into Homo economicus, where a woman's arousal is dictated by earning reports and income statements and profit and loss and all of these checklists that women love. It's not what the machine was built for. And just because in the last 50 years of peacetime sexual marketplace norms doesn't change the fact that female preference is bred for conflict. Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, and final thought, I'll once again name check the male value formula: get jacked, learn game, build clout. If you've been following along, you will understand that those all designate certain values that men can cultivate and create to signal to women. And one of the first videos that we ever put out on this channel was how physicality was so important because it was harder to fake. This is where evolutionary mismatch comes in, and why getting jacked, no matter how abundant we become, no matter how sophisticated our lives may become in terms of how we deal with each other, men dealing with men, men dealing with women, all of that, no matter how refined, physicality always plays a role because women breed for war, whether they like it or not. Take care.